continuing on with chapter 15. All right, so another law, not in your book but on your test, is the Safe Drinking Water Act. It sets standards for drinking water quality, and the EPA administers the law. So the Clean Water Act is more for rivers and lakes and their cleanliness. Your actual drinking water is the Safe Drinking Water Act. Well, how do we get safe drinking water? How does the water cleaned before it gets to your tap? A lot of places pump their water from underground. A lot of cities get it from rivers, or from, if they're next to a lake like a Great Lake, they get it from there. We have our water from aqueducts that take it from rivers up north and bring it here. So how do we clean it to make it safe? Well, we send it through water treatment. So a water treatment plant, and one of them is at the top of Central Park. Some of you went there over the summer. First step, water is pumped through screens to remove large debris like plastic, leaves, sticks, etc. Sometimes flocculation happens, and what happens is they use a precipitate which clarifies the water to get rid of muddy water and sediments. We don't do this because our water is not very muddy when we get it, so we don't do flocculation here, but it is a step, and you do need to know what flocculation means, which again is using a precipitate to clarify muddy water. The precipitate that can be used is aluminum hydroxide to, again, precipitate out the mud and sediments. The next thing we do is we zap the water with ozone or UV light to kill bacteria. And this started back when we had people in the 1980s die from cryptosporidium, because cryptosporidium can't be killed by chlorine, and we used to add tiny bits of chlorine to kill pathogens. Well, the cryptosporidium have a hard shell, and they didn't die from the chlorine, and so now we zap it with UV light or ozone, and that kills it. Well, now that we've killed all this bacteria, we filter it through sand and gravel in a sedimentation basin, which removes the dead bacteria, and this dead bacteria is called sludge, and it's sent to farms as fertilizer. Up at the top of Central Park, the Castaic Lake Water Agency treatment plant, they send their sludge to Lombardy Ranch, and it's really good fertilizer. The water is then stored in storage tanks or storage basins, and then right before it's sent to your house, it's disinfected with chlorine. And this prevents bacterial contamination that might be there in the pipes between the treatment plant and your house. The chlorine is not long lasting, so they send it just right before they put it in right before they send it off to your house. All right, turning to page 458. How do we prevent pollution? It says here that it's better to prevent pollution than to mitigate. Mitigate means fix it. And so here are 3 strategies to prevent pollution, and you need to know about all 3. All right, so after we've used our water, now it goes through water treatment. So it says here wastewater and its treatment. If you live in a city, your wastewater, you flush your toilet, it goes to a wastewater treatment plant. If you don't live in a city, you have a septic tank. And these are people that live out in the country or not, or on a farm, or again, not hooked up to city sewer lines. And they hold the wastewater. And again, this is in rural areas. And inside the septic tank are bacteria that decompose the waste. Okay, for the rest of us, when you flush the toilet, it goes to a wastewater treatment plant. We have 2 in Santa Clarita. We have a small one that is over off of San Fernando Road and kind of across from Stonefire, across the road. And the big one is actually off the old road by Magic Mountain. And it treats our sewage water, which is more complicated than treating our drinking water. All right, when you flush your toilet, first it goes into a treatment facility, and there are screens here to get rid of trash and solid and grit and twigs and whatever else people flush down toilets or go down drains. And a lot of that just goes to the landfill when it's done. And then it allows these solids like oils and greases to rise to the top, and they're skimmed off and sent to the landfill or sometimes treated. Then they bubble it with oxygen and add bacteria to consume and break down organic matter. After that, they remove more greases and solids and oils, and then they disinfect it with chlorine and UV light. The treated organic matter is called sludge, and it's sent to farms and things like that. It's only sent to farms that do not grow food crops. So farms that grow cotton, that's where the sludge goes to. Okay, so the first and second here is called primary treatment, and 11% of the U.S. only has primary treatment. Stages 3 and 4 is called secondary treatment. So if you do all 1 through 4, you do secondary wastewater treatment, and 62% of the U.S. does numbers 1 through 4. In Santa Clarita, we do tertiary treatment, which is number 5, and that's because our water goes back to our river and goes to farms. And we want to make sure that our water is very, very, very clean so that the farmers who use it after we're done with it have clean water. LA City only goes to number 4 because they discharge their wastewater into the ocean and they don't need to go to number 5, but we do. A lot of cities and towns are taking their water after tertiary treatment and they're actually pumping it back into their aquifers. Because for a long time we just dumped it back into a river which flows to the ocean, and that water is clean and can be reused again. In Santa Clarita, we reuse some of it for golf courses, like the Westridge Golf Course reuses some of our reclaimed water. It's called reclaimed water. In Orange County, they're taking this water now and they're pumping it down underground to recharge their aquifers, and then they pump it back out and clean it again for drinking water. It's kind of weird, but really that's pretty natural. It's what they do on the space shuttle. It's what they do in Israel. And as our water supplies become more and more stretched with more and more people on the planet, it becomes a kind of a good solution. Page 460. Small communities and towns can use wetlands to treat their wastewater. They're cheaper than building a wastewater treatment plant. It also provides habitat and recreation, and so this science behind the story describes this in Arcata, which is in California. Make sure you know what sludge or biosolids, same term. It's the solid material from wastewater that is sent to farms as fertilizer. All right, 461 and 462, no sticky notes. So we are actually done with chapter 15.